In the winter of 1931, as shadows lengthened over West Orange and the last rays of sun filtered through the dusty windows of the once bustling laboratory, Thomas Alva Edison prepared for his final discovery. It wouldn't be a light bulb, a phonograph, or any device that could be touched or sold. It would be something infinitely more precious and perilous, the truth about what happens when human consciousness crosses the veil of death. The manuscript was only found in 2023, hidden deep within the Edison family archives, sealed with red wax and accompanied by a letter that trembled in the hands of whoever read it. "Let this remain hidden until humanity is ready to understand," the inventor's shaky script declared. "What is written here must not see the light of day, while institutions still fear the truth about the soul's eternity." For nearly a century, these words lay buried, awaiting the moment someone possessed the courage to unearth the secrets Edison had almost taken to his grave. The recording was made in October 1931, just 3 months before his death, when Edison no longer cared about reputations or social niceties. His body was frail, but his mind remained sharp as a razor, keen enough to pierce the mysteries he'd silently pursued for decades. He knew his time was running out, and there was something urgent that needed to be documented before it was too late. It wasn't merely a confession, it was a testament from someone who had touched the other side of reality and returned to tell what he had seen. The man who had revolutionized the world with his inventions had, in his final years, become an obsessive scholar of phenomena science couldn't explain. While the world celebrated his tangible creations, Edison delved ever deeper into the intangible mysteries of human existence. He had secretly built what he called a spiritual telephone, a device he claimed could communicate with the dead. The scientific community scoffed, newspapers ridiculed him, but Edison continued his experiments in private, convinced he was on the verge of a discovery that would forever alter humanity's understanding of life and death. What few knew was that Edison wasn't just seeking communication with the dead, he was seeking to understand the dying process itself. For years, he had collected accounts from near-death experiences, interviewed doctors about their patients' final moments, and studied ancient texts on the soul's transition. His wife Mina had died years earlier, and since then he had been haunted by vivid dreams where she appeared to reveal secrets about the world beyond the veil. Initially, Edison dismissed these experiences as the product of his grieving imagination, but gradually he began to notice patterns, consistencies that defied any rational explanation. In the forbidden recording, Edison reveals that in his final years he had developed a special sensitivity to what he called spiritual currents. Just as he had learned to master physical electricity, he began to perceive an electricity of a completely different nature, an energy that permeated not only living bodies, but persisted beyond physical death. He describes this discovery with the same scientific precision he applied to his most famous inventions, but with a reverence he had rarely shown for any of his previous work. The first major revelation came when Edison began to realize that people nearing death emitted what he termed spiritual electrical signals. These signals were imperceptible to conventional instruments, but could be detected by a sufficiently sensitized consciousness. He describes how he learned to recognize these signals in the weeks leading up to someone's death, a subtle shift in the quality of the person's presence, as if part of their essence was already disconnecting from the physical body and preparing for the next journey. Edison reveals that he had developed prototypes of devices capable of detecting these transition currents, but he never made them public for fear of the consequences. He knew humanity wasn't prepared for scientific proof of consciousness surviving death. The implications would be devastating to existing religious, political, and social structures. If people knew for certain that death was merely a transition, not an end, the entire system of control based on the fear of mortality would crumble like a house of cards. But the most extraordinary revelation was yet to come. Edison confesses that in his final months he had begun experiencing what he called preparatory visits, moments when deceased loved ones appeared to assist him in his approaching transition. His wife Mina was the most frequent visitor, but there were others. His mother, dear friends, even historical figures who had influenced his work. These visits weren't dreams or hallucinations. They were conscious encounters that occurred in a state of heightened perception Edison had learned to cultivate. The inventor describes in striking detail how these entities explained the dying process and what happened in the first moments after the cessation of bodily functions. According to his accounts, consciousness didn't disappear instantly with the death of the body. Instead, it remained coherent and lucid for a period that could last from a few minutes to several hours, depending on the circumstances of death and the person's spiritual development. Edison reveals that in the first, moments after death, consciousness goes through three distinct phases. In the first phase, which he called recognition, the newly deceased realizes they are no longer in their physical body, but retain all their memories, personality, and capacity for thought intact. It's a moment of astonishment and sometimes confusion, as the experience defies everything the person had been taught to expect about death. The second phase, which Edison termed orientation, involves the arrival of spiritual guides, often loved ones who have already transitioned, who help the individual understand their new situation and prepare for what comes next. It's during this phase that many report the famous light tunnel, which Edison described not as a visual phenomenon, but as a metaphor for the magnetic attraction of consciousness toward higher dimensions of existence. The third phase, which Edison called integration, is when the individual consciousness merges temporarily with a larger collective consciousness, allowing the person to instantly understand the purpose of their recently ended life and the lessons they were meant to learn from that experience. It's a moment of absolute clarity, where all questions find answers and all suffering finds meaning. But Edison didn't stop there. He revealed that he had discovered something even more extraordinary. Death wasn't a solitary experience. Each time someone died, the transition affected the entire network of consciousnesses connected to that person, creating waves of spiritual energy that could be felt by sensitive individuals even at great distances. It was as if each death were a stone dropped into the lake of collective consciousness, creating ripples that spread far beyond the point of initial impact. The inventor confessed that this discovery had completely changed his perspective on grief and loss. He realized that when we mourn the death of a loved one, we aren't just reacting to physical separation, we're responding to a real alteration in the energetic structure of our own existence. The deceased person, even having transitioned, maintains spiritual connections with those they leave behind, and these connections can be perceived and even strengthened through specific practices. Edison revealed that he had developed techniques to maintain communication with his deceased wife and other loved ones. This wasn't about theatrical seances or dramatic supernatural phenomena, but a subtle and scientific process of tuning into specific frequencies of consciousness. He described this communication as similar to tuning a radio to a specific station. It was necessary to adjust one's own consciousness to the correct frequency and maintain a state of quiet receptivity. The most unsettling aspect of his revelations was the discovery that many people, upon dying, remained stuck between dimensions for extended periods due to intense emotional attachments or limiting beliefs about death. Edison had learned to identify these situations and developed methods to help these trapped consciousnesses complete their transition. It was work he performed in secret, knowing he would be considered a lunatic if discovered. He describes specific cases of people he had helped cross over, always using scientific language and rigorous methodology. To Edison, there was no difference between helping a trapped consciousness transition and solving a complex engineering problem. Both required careful observation, systematic analysis, and the application of fundamental principles, even if those principles were spiritual in nature rather than physical. The most shocking revelation came when Edison confessed that he himself had experienced a temporary death a few years before the recording. During a complicated surgery, his consciousness had separated from his body for several minutes, allowing him to experience firsthand the process he had studied theoretically for so long. He described this experience with the same precision he would describe the workings of one of his inventions. During this near-death experience, Edison had been greeted by figures he recognized as great inventors and scientists of the past, figures whose discoveries had shaped the world. They revealed to him that there exists an Akashic library, where all human knowledge is preserved, and where great innovators continue working even after physical death, inspiring and guiding new discoverers. In the physical world, Edison revealed that many of his most important inventions hadn't arisen solely from his personal genius, but from inspirations received from this transcendent source. The incandescent light bulb, the phonograph, the electrical distribution system, all these creations had been in part conduits of knowledge from higher dimensions of consciousness. He was, in essence, a medium through which superior intelligences had introduced technological advancements to humanity when it was ready to receive them. This revelation shed a completely new light on the concept of genius and innovation. Edison suggested that humanity's great advancements weren't products of isolated minds working alone, but the result of a constant collaboration between embodied and disembodied consciousnesses, a network of intelligence that transcended the boundaries of life and death. Each great inventor, artist, or philosopher was, in fact, a connection point in this larger network of consciousness. But Edison wasn't just revealing secrets about death and the afterlife. He was preparing something even more extraordinary. In the final months of his life, he had begun receiving specific instructions on a final invention, a device that could not only detect the presence of disembodied consciousnesses, but allow clear and consistent two-way communication between worlds. It wouldn't be a primitive spiritual telephone like his earlier experiments, but a true portal between dimensions. The project was so advanced that Edison knew he wouldn't live to complete it in the physical world. But that didn't worry him. He had understood that he would continue working on it on the other side, and that it would eventually inspire another inventor to build the device when humanity was sufficiently evolved to use it responsibly. It was one of many inventions that existed first in the spiritual realm before manifesting in the physical world. Edison confessed that in his final days, he could feel the approach of his own transition with crystal clarity. There was no fear, only scientific curiosity and a growing excitement for the adventure that awaited him. He described the signs he'd learned to recognize, the gradual loosening of the connection between consciousness and body, the increasing sensitivity to spiritual frequencies, and the ever more frequent arrival of visitors from the other side who came to prepare the way for his journey. He revealed that he had programmed a series of posthumous signs that he would send to specific individuals after his death as a way of proving the continuity of consciousness. These signs would not be dramatic manifestations, but subtle and significant events that his loved ones would recognize as deliberate messages. It was his way of continuing his scientific work even after the transition, providing empirical evidence of the survival of consciousness. The most touching revelation came when he described how he had prepared himself emotionally to leave the physical world. He had spent months making peace with every important relationship in his life, expressing gratitude for each experience and releasing any bitterness or regret that might impede a smooth transition. It was a process he recommended to everyone, not just those nearing death, but anyone who wished to live fully. He explained that one of the greatest discoveries of his later years was understanding that death wasn't something that would happen to him, but something he would consciously do when the appropriate time arrived. The transition of consciousness from the physical body to higher states of existence could be a voluntary and controlled process, just like any other scientific experiment. It required preparation, knowledge, and above all, the courage to embrace the unknown. In the final moments of the recording, he revealed his deepest discovery, that the entire universe was, in essence, a vast consciousness exploring itself through countless individual experiences. Each human life was like one of his experiments, an attempt by this universal consciousness to understand specific aspects of its own nature. Death was simply the end of one experiment and the beginning of another, in an infinite sequence of explorations and discoveries. He described how he had come to understand that his role as an inventor had been deeper than he had imagined. Each of his inventions had been a way of connecting humanity, of breaking down barriers between people and places, of accelerating the flow of information and energy throughout the world. Unconsciously, he had been preparing the infrastructure for an eventual unification of human consciousness, a future moment when all individual minds would recognize themselves as aspects of a single cosmic intelligence. Electric light had eliminated the separation between day and night. The phonograph had preserved voices through time. The electrical distribution system had created a power grid that connected entire communities. All these inventions were physical, reflections of a deeper spiritual reality, the fundamental interconnectedness of all consciousnesses. He revealed that after death, this interconnectedness became not only evident, but directly experiential. The sense of separation that characterized the human experience vanished, replaced by an awareness of unity that was simultaneously terrifying and ecstatic. It was as if each person were an individual note in a cosmic symphony, finally able to hear the complete music of which they were a part. He confessed that this revelation had changed his perspective on all the suffering and all the joy of his life. Every hardship had been an opportunity for the universal consciousness to experience and transcend specific limitations. Every triumph had been a celebration of the infinite possibilities of cosmic creativity. Nothing had been wasted. Everything had contributed to a deeper understanding of the nature of existence. The recording ends with him expressing profound gratitude for having had the opportunity to be a channel through which universal consciousness had explored the possibilities of invention and innovation. He saw himself not as the creator of his inventions, but as their instrument, and felt honored to have been chosen for this role. His approaching death did not represent the end of his work, but his graduation to a higher level of service to the evolution of consciousness. In the final words of the forbidden recording, he reveals that he had understood the deepest secret of existence, that death was merely an illusion created by over-identification with the physical body. The true reality was the eternal consciousness that animated all bodies, all minds, all worlds. This consciousness had never been born and would never die. It merely moved from experience to experience, from form to form, always exploring, always growing, always becoming more aware of its own infinite nature. He ended with a promise that he would continue working from the other side to help humanity awaken to this fundamental truth. His future inventions would not be physical machines, but techniques and inspirations that would help people expand their consciousness and recognize their true spiritual identity. The greatest invention was yet to come, a method by which every human being could directly experience their eternal nature and their connection to all life. As the sun set over West Orange that October evening in 1931, he carefully switched off the recorder and sealed the tape containing his most precious revelations. He knew the world wasn't ready for these truths, but he trusted that the day would come when humanity would be mature enough to understand that death was only the beginning of the true adventure of consciousness. Until then, his secrets would remain guarded, patiently awaiting the dawn of a new era of spiritual understanding. 3 months later, when he made his final transition, those who were present reported that his last moments were marked by extraordinary serenity and a smile that suggested he was seeing something wonderful that others couldn't perceive. His last words were an almost inaudible whisper. "It's so beautiful there." No one fully understood what he meant until, decades later, his secret revelations finally came to light, offering humanity a glimpse of what the great inventor had discovered about the eternal journey of the soul.